Roommate Gone Wrong. It was midsummer in 2024. I lived in a small town in Oregon. In January 2024, I got evicted from my house, where I lived with my mom and 3 siblings. We struggled to sell the house in the last upcoming days to our eviction and never found a place to stay, so we resorted to living in an RV with 1 bedroom. The RV was broken down and unregistered, so we were forced to live inside a storage unit without any power or running water. My mother and 21-year-old younger sister was addicted to fentanyl amongst other drugs. We were always accompanied by their druggy friends, which consisted of weird, perverted older men. My mother was in and out of jail constantly for multiple convictions, including theft, hit and run, running somebody over, yes, quite literally. So I was always tasked with the fault of looking after the 2 younger children, 15 and 9. I met this one girl online, 29, where she sent me money here and there for food or gas. She was flirtatious and had obvious intentions to get with me. Now I should note that I was also just freshly broken up with my ex-girlfriend of 3 years. She dumped me in January before I went homeless. I was not looking for a relationship. We spent a few weeks talking, and she ended up falling for me. She also made it known she was transgender, male to female. No surgeries yet. I was a 22-year-old female, lesbian, so I was not interested. I don't mean to sound rude, I'm not transphobic. A few weeks in, she was aware of my abusive homeless situation and offered me to come down to Florida and live with her. I was distant at first, but was desperate to get out of said situation. I was an immigrant in the USA. I'm from the UK, been there illegally for 11 years, so I could not work. I ended up taking her up on her offer, and she bought me plane tickets that day, set for 2 weeks later. I told my family that I was going on a cruise ship vacation for 2 weeks and that I'll be back after. I was not planning on coming back, but my mother would not have let me leave if I said I was not returning. 2 weeks passed, and my mom drove me to the airport, begging me not to leave. I ignored her beggings, which she did in many, and I mean many forms. I've never traveled alone or knew how to navigate an airport, but I was desperate to get out of that situation, and desperation made me willing to do things that were potentially dangerous. I navigated the airport, and I had a 1-hour flight, then an 8-hour layover, then a 6-hour flight right after. Mind you, I'm terrified to the brim of planes and heights. The traveling was awful. I almost missed my last flight as they changed the plane and I was not notified, so I was extremely stressed on top of everything else. I landed at around 1 p.m. in Florida in a black hooded onesie as Oregon was freezing cold. I was met by the intense humid heat of the Florida swamp. I made my way through the airport and this girl was waiting for me at the terminal entrance. She picked me up and swung me around like we were together, then proceeded to hold my hand all the way to where she parked her car. I was aggravated as I didn't really enjoy this physical touch and the fact that I was nicotine deprived. We got to the car where I yanked my hand away and threw up over the edge of the balcony from motion sickness and jet lag. I lit a cigarette up and took in everything that had happened in the past few weeks. I also had not slept for over a day. I was too terrified to sleep on the plane. The drive home was around 2 hours, and it was the most awkward drive I've ever experienced. She was quiet, and I was going through a lot of mental problems, completely in denial that I was away from my nightmare situation back home. When we got to her town, she insisted that we get food and walk around the ocean pier. I was starving but was completely exhausted at this point, so I asked if we could just get food and then go home and sleep. She kept making excuses, saying that she wanted to give me a tour of beautiful Florida. I was too exhausted to argue, so I went along with it, walking around town in a black onesie in 100 degrees Fahrenheit weather like a zombie. She was obviously getting annoyed with me as I was in a mood, which I was, but I did mention to her multiple times I just wanted to sleep. We got back to the house where I asked her where I was sleeping, and she motioned to a single bed where she also slept. She shared a small RV with another man. We had to share a bed, which was put up as she had cats that would pee on her bedding. I asked her to pull it down, but she kept making more excuses and motioned for us to take a walk around the neighborhood to get me used to the area. Again, I was exhausted. We went walking around, where I chain smoked cigarettes and took in the scenery. We got back an hour later, and she still refused me of sleep the entire walk home, as she was touchy and trying to hold my hand, etc. We got to a truck where I sat in the passenger side and smoked some more. She joined me and chain smoked joints, pot. Hours went by, and I ended up bawling my eyes out in front of her, which ended up in her getting annoyed with me, telling me to just get back home. I was all over the place mentally, and sleep exhaustion was making it worse. We went then on another walk at night. This is going on now, over a day without sleep. We got to a little pier again, where she was kissing me and holding me. I was making her aware I did not like this either, but she kept insisting. We got home at around 10 p.m. and finally ended up putting the bed down, where I fell asleep immediately. Honestly, I can't remember much of the next few days after that, but it consisted of random activities around town and lots of good food. She did not work and relied on her roommate's income. They had a weird relationship where she gets all his money and he just works and plays video games. She takes care of him. It was weird, trust me. About a week after is when things started to get worse. She was snapping at me over little things, getting jealous over people in my DMs and belittling my trauma, calling my family names. They weren't the best. They are really awful, but that's still something you don't want to hear from random strangers. We played a few games together where she'd get obviously ragey at them, which also triggered a traumatic feeling from me, as I had a previous stepdad with video game rage, and I'd have to listen to him all night go at it, then eventually at my mom. Few more days passed, and she informed me that she had a son who lived with her family as she couldn't take care of him in her current situation. She asked me to come along with her to her family's house and meet everyone, including her son. I told her that it was not a good idea, as I didn't want him getting the wrong impression of me, as she was obviously into me and thought of me as a girlfriend. Plus, I needed alone time, as I never got any of that living with my family. She threw the biggest fit, but eventually left, where she texted me the entire time she was out. I kid you not even 2 hours later, she returned with all of them, brought her son inside to meet me, etc. I was furious, but it wasn't the child's fault, so I greeted him gracefully, but made a lot of attempts to hide in the bathroom or truck to smoke. They left, and that was it for that day. More days passed, and she would try to get me to go on walks with her to her roommate's work to smoke. I kept asking to stay for alone time, but each time was met with door slams and messages the entire time she was gone. At this point, the arguing was getting worse and worse. She was getting more and more violent, and she was lashing out over small things. One lash out was her trying to fix the air conditioner, where she was getting obviously frustrated by the heat. She lashed out on me, then begged me to stand over her with a blow dryer. That blew out hot heat. I told her that was a bad idea and to just step outside for a bit and smoke and calm down. She lashed out completely on me since I refused to do this, so I left and sat out in the vehicle. She later came out to smoke in a mood, throwing things around in the truck, smoking in awkward silence with me. The arguing was getting worse and worse. I refused sexual activity with her, and she went to the extreme measures of buying me libido booster gummies to help me put me in the mood. It made me uncomfortable. She would make these remarks that she was an OnlyFans creator and knew what she was doing. I wasn't into men downstairs, if you know what I mean. This led to a lot of arguments. One night we got into an argument over me not showing her any affection, and I was tired, so I got into bed and attempted to sleep. She then threw a fit and told me that I go to sleep, we are done. I was turned over in bed with the blankets over me, completely trying to ignore her screaming at me. I was also bawling my eyes out, regretting coming down there as I was 2,000 miles away from my family with a crazy stranger. She would say the meanest things possible, but I blacked them out. She came in and out of the RV, slamming the door each time and yelling at me for around 15 minutes. This went on for. Last time she came back in, she ripped the blankets off me and forced to go and talk to her in the truck. I refused and told her I didn't feel like it and just wanted to sleep. She was relentless, so I got up and zombie walked out to the truck where I smoked a cigarette and blacked out while she was screaming at me. She left eventually and went inside the house and blasted music so loud it vibrated the truck from outside. I spent the night crying outside for about 2 hours, where I ordered food eventually, and she came out to eat with me. We went inside and slept. Finally. After that night, she begged me to go to Gator World with her, a place in Florida where you can view a lot of gators amongst other animals. Lol. I didn't want to, as it was a 2-hour trip and I was exhausted from fighting from the night before. She begged, literally begged, and I caved in and went with her. It was awkward the entire time. I paid for everything as well, with little money I earned from generous friends online. She spent all her money on pot, knowing I have a drug trauma. She did the exact thing my mom did, spent all money on drugs and left us broke. When she was out of weed, she was withdrawing and mean. It was not helping my healing process, as I just got out of the situation to be placed in an almost similar one. Few more days passed and it was like I was living in hell. Constant arguing, constant sleep deprivation. I was tired, not just psychically. One of my last nights there, she took me to the beach at night, as I'm in love with the beach. We argued the entire drive there, parking the car. She walked so far ahead of me, gaining distance, and I was struggling to keep up with her. Not knowing where I was going, we got to the beach and she didn't exchange one word with me. She sat away from me walked into the water fully clothed and stood there like she was in a movie or something. Walking back, she was again so far ahead where I was struggling to keep up. She eventually stopped and turned back towards me to continue the argument, where I snapped back and made a comment about her son. I knew I messed up the second I said it. She replied with multiple cursing and multiple name-calling, where she told me to walk home and told me I needed to live on the streets. I ended up getting in the car with her, and when we got back to the RV, I packed my stuff and told her I would sleep in the truck until the morning, where I had money for an hotel and Uber. She got on her knees when I started packing and begged me to stay. I stayed, but started making plans with my best online friend of 6 years to come and pick me up later in the week and let me stay with her and her parents instead. The night after that, we got into yet another argument. This one was the worst. She was yelling at me in the streets, where I begged her to take it inside as the neighbors was watching, and I felt embarrassed, but she got more violent. The fight is kind of a blur as I ended up snapping at her, yelling, screaming at her back. I think I had some kind of manic episode. I grabbed my stuff, went to the truck and called my best friend crying. She told me she would pick me up in the morning, but I couldn't stand staying another night with this girl. So I scrambled up some money and paid for a low-end hotel and Uber. I grabbed my stuff and got into an Uber with this older man that looked kind of creepy. He dropped me off at the hotel. I walked up to it and checked in. The manager told me that if I noticed anything creepy, to report it back to her. I walked to my room, where it looked like something out of GTA. Drug deals going outside, people yelling at each other. I got inside my room from the eye-ogling older man hanging outside and locked it immediately, shoving the chair up against it as well and closing the blinds. I got into bed and plugged my laptop in, where I watched a movie. It was peaceful and the bed was comfy, but the room was riddled in roaches everywhere. I couldn't open my bag as I was afraid of them crawling inside my stuff. Even though there was roaches everywhere, I had the best sleep I had in months, since I got kicked out of my home with my own room and own privacy. The next morning I was picked up by my best friend and her father, and we drove back to our house, where they set me up in their garage. I then had the best month after that, as her family treated me amazingly. It was the best month I had in my life. Regarding this, my last interaction with this crazy girl was me going back down there to collect my passport, where she kept it from me, along with taking my phone and going through my Facebook, calling me names through my own messenger. I eventually got all my remaining stuff and never saw her again after that. So to the crazy girl in Florida, let's not meet again.